My name is Lena Whitmore, and I am 28 years old. This is my personal story. By the time winter touched the city, everyone already knew the marriage was over. They just didn't know how brutally it would end. The house sat on a hill outside Seattle, wrapped in glass and steel, designed to look powerful even in silence. From the outside, it felt untouchable. From the inside, it had already turned cold. That was the first thing Lena Carter noticed when she woke up that morning. Not the snow, not the gray sky, but the absence of warmth. Not physical warmth, something deeper, something human. For 10 years, this place had been her responsibility. Not just cleaning or decorating, maintaining the illusion. She knew where the cracks were, where the investors liked to sit, which rooms needed music during parties, which corners hid secrets that were never meant to be spoken out loud. She was the unseen structure holding everything upright. But that morning, the house felt like it didn't recognize her anymore. Her phone buzzed once. No name, just a message. Come downstairs now. No greeting, no explanation. She already knew. Lena took her time, not because she was calm, but because something inside her had gone quiet. When emotions shut down like that, it usually meant survival mode had taken over. She put on a simple coat, slipped her fate into boots she'd bought years ago on sale, and walked down the wide staircase that had once been featured in a magazine titled "Power Lives Here." At the bottom, Mark Carter was waiting, her husband, CEO, media darling, the man who smiled on magazine covers and spoke about loyalty in interviews. He didn't stand up when she entered. That detail mattered more than anything else. He was seated at the long dining table, scrolling through his phone, jaw tight but expression controlled. Beside him stood his mother, Evelyn, wrapped in a beige coat that screamed wealth without effort. She looked at Lena the way someone looks at a stain they've already decided won't come out. No one offered her a seat. The silence stretched, thick, calculated. Mark finally looked up then, studying her face like he was waiting for something. Tears? Begging? A scene? That was what men like him expected when power shifted, when control was taken. But Lena gave him nothing. She nodded once. That confused him. She stood, quietly closing the folder, and asked a single question. Not emotional, not angry. How long do I have? Mark hesitated, then answered. Tonight. Evelyn smiled. That smile said everything. It said, you were never one of us. It said, you stayed too long. It said, we finally won. Lena walked out of the dining room without another word. She moved through the house slowly, not out of attachment, but observation. She touched nothing, took nothing that wasn't already hers. No art, no jewelry, no gifts meant to remind her of a life she was being erased from. At sunset, snow began to fall. Mark's driver waited outside, not to take her anywhere, just to watch her leave. The gate closed behind her with a mechanical sound that echoed longer than it should have. That was the moment people talk about later, the moment she was discarded. But what no one saw was what didn't happen. She didn't cry, she didn't call friends, she didn't collapse. She walked. The city swallowed her fast. Traffic noise, neon signs, cold air biting through her coat. With every step, the version of herself they thought they destroyed slipped further away. 10 years earlier, Lena had been someone else entirely, a name she hadn't used in public, a background she had buried because Mark had told her it would complicate things. She agreed. She believed him. She'd made herself smaller for his rise smoother. That was her mistake. She found a cheap hotel near the train station, the kind of place no one asks questions, the kind of place powerful men never look. In the bathroom mirror under flickering light, she studied her reflection. Not broken, just stripped. The layers were gone. What remained was something sharp. She opened her phone, scrolled past dozens of contacts she knew would offer sympathy but no solutions. Then she stopped. A number she hadn't touched in years. No name saved, just memory. She hesitated, not out of fear, but calculation. Making this call meant reopening a door she'd locked for a reason, a world she'd stepped away from to play house, to be normal. But normal had cost her everything. She pressed call. The line rang once, twice. When the voice answered, older but unmistakable, Lena didn't introduce herself. She didn't need to. She said only one sentence: "Tell him his daughter is done disappearing." The line went silent. Then came a breath, slow, controlled. Everything changed in that breath. She hung up before questions could be asked. That night, while snow covered the city, Mark hosted a small gathering in the house she'd just been thrown out of. Laughter echoed where her footsteps used to be. Glasses clinked. People congratulated him quietly, carefully, the way powerful circles do when something ugly has just happened. Mark smiled, relaxed, free. He believed the story was finished. He didn't know the paperwork he'd rushed her to sign had been reviewed line by line years ago by someone else, someone he had never met, someone who understood systems, ownership, and patience. He didn't know that the nothing Lena walked away with was a choice. And he definitely didn't know that the silence she carried wasn't defeat. It was timing. By morning, Lena was gone from the city. No forwarding address, no social media trail, no public trace. People assumed she'd returned to obscurity, embarrassed, broken, irrelevant. That assumption would become their most expensive mistake, because power doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it waits. Lena disappeared the way powerful people assume weak people do, quietly, without resistance, without consequences. At least, that's what Mark believed. By the time the private jet carried him to New York for a tech summit, her name had already been removed from internal documents, email access revoked, and household staff instructed never to mention her again. That was how erasure worked in his world: clean, efficient, unquestioned. What Mark didn't realize was that Lena had lived an entire life before him, where disappearing wasn't defeat, it was strategy. She took a train east, no luggage worth noticing, no designer labels, just neutral colors and a face trained to go unnoticed. The city she arrived in didn't welcome her, didn't reject her, it simply moved around her. That was fine. That was perfect. The apartment she stepped into wasn't luxurious. It wasn't meant to be. It belonged to a woman who didn't ask questions and didn't care about last names. Cash up front, short lease, no paper trail. That first night, Lena didn't sleep. Not because she was grieving, but because memory had returned. The kind of memory you keep locked away because it doesn't fit the life you're trying to build. Before Mark, before the house, before the interviews and charity dinners and forced smiles, there had been another version of her, a sharper one. She remembered late nights in conference rooms that smelled like burnt coffee and ambition, old men who underestimated her, contracts that hid traps in polite language. She remembered learning to read people the way others read headlines. She remembered the first time someone had told her she was too much, too smart, too direct, too dangerous. That was when she'd learned to become quiet. Mark had loved that version of her, the softened one, the one who let him take credit, take space, take center stage. He called it partnership. He called it balance. But balance, she now understood, was just another word for containment. The days that followed were deliberately slow. She cooked simple meals, walked unfamiliar streets, watched people who didn't know her past or care about her future. It grounded her. It reminded her that survival didn't need applause. Then came the emails. Not to her, about her. Old acquaintances from a world she'd left behind had noticed movement, subtle shifts, quiet inquiries, legal teams requesting archived files, financial firms asking questions they hadn't asked in years. Someone had made the call. The man on the other end of that call wasn't emotional. He never had been. He was patient. And patient men with power didn't react. They prepared. Lena met him a week later in a private office that overlooked nothing impressive. No skyline, no luxury, just glass, steel, and silence. He looked older, thinner, but his eyes hadn't softened. He didn't hug her, he didn't ask how she was. He asked one question: "Are you finished hiding?" She answered without hesitation: "Yes." That was enough. They spoke for hours, not about Mark, not about betrayal, not about marriage. They spoke about leverage, about history, about documents that never expired, about contributions that had been buried under someone else's name. Lena hadn't just supported Mark emotionally in the early years, she had funded him. Not directly, not publicly, but legally. At the time, Mark had called it temporary, a formality, a structure that would be cleaned up later. She had trusted him, not blindly, but conveniently. Now, those structures mattered, very much. Meanwhile, Mark was enjoying the version of freedom he thought he'd earned. His social circle expanded fast. New faces, new compliments, new admiration. People praised his courage for choosing himself, for not staying in a relationship that no longer aligned. They didn't ask what alignment cost. He moved his girlfriend into the house within a month. She laughed too loudly, tried too hard, wore Lena's space like it was borrowed and fragile. Mark mistook her eagerness for loyalty. The company announced a merger. Stock prices rose. His name trended. Not scandal, but success. He believed he had won cleanly. That belief was fragile because the first crack didn't come publicly. It came quietly. An investor delayed a meeting. A legal team requested additional verification. A bank asked questions that felt unnecessary. Nothing alarming, nothing obvious, just enough friction to be annoying. Mark blamed inefficiency, bureaucracy, overcautious advisors. He was used to systems bending around him. They always had. What Mark didn't realize was that Lena wasn't bending them. She was reminding them how they were supposed to work. Back in her apartment, Lena watched everything unfold from a distance, not obsessively, strategically. She didn't rush, she didn't interfere prematurely. She let momentum build in the wrong direction, the way avalanches always did. Some nights, doubt crept in, not about revenge, about cost. She had built a life that demanded silence. Breaking that silence meant exposure, questions, headlines, consequences she had avoided for years. But then she remembered the snow, the gate, the smile on Evelyn's face, and the doubt disappeared. The second meeting with her father was shorter. He slid a file across the table. Inside were copies, old agreements, early investment frameworks, dormant clauses that hadn't been activated because no one thought to check. Mark's company wasn't stolen, it was borrowed. Lena had never demanded credit. Now she didn't need to. All she needed was timing. That same week, Mark received a notice, a routine audit, standard procedure, nothing to worry about. He laughed it off. But something about the wording unsettled him. A name appeared, one he didn't recognize, a beneficiary category that didn't exist when he last reviewed the documents. He told himself it was nothing. Men like Mark always did. Lena packed a single bag. She changed her hair, her style, her pace, not to hide, but to return to herself. She wasn't becoming someone new, she was becoming accurate. In the mirror, she no longer looked like a wife, she looked like a variable. And variables, when ignored long enough, destabilize entire systems. By the end of the month, the merger stalled. By the end of the quarter, whispers started. By the time Mark realized something was wrong, the machinery was already moving, quietly, legally, inevitably. And Lena was no longer watching from the sidelines. She was stepping back into the frame. Not to be seen, but to be felt. Power doesn't collapse loudly. It hesitates first. Mark felt it in places he couldn't explain, in meetings that ended too quickly, in emails that used too many polite words, in phone calls that were no longer returned the same day. At first, he told himself it was normal. Growth always came with resistance. People always doubted success when it moved too fast. He had heard it all before. But this time felt different. This time, the doubt wasn't emotional. It was structural. The audit that had once seemed routine stretched longer than expected. Requests multiplied. Clarifications turned into verifications. Verifications turned into legal language that no longer sounded harmless. Mark's legal team reassured him. Nothing unusual, they said. Just procedural, they added. Still, he stopped sleeping. He began checking documents himself late at night, scrolling through files he hadn't opened in years. Old agreements, early funding rounds, names that no longer mattered, or so he thought. That's when he saw it again, the beneficiary clause. It wasn't new, it wasn't altered, it had always been there. Mark remembered skimming past it years ago, back when survival mattered more than ownership, back when he needed money fast and didn't care where it came from as long as it came quietly. He remembered Lena sitting across from him at a small kitchen table, explaining things he pretended to understand. She had insisted on formalizing the contribution. He had laughed, kissed her forehead, and told her she worried too much. Now that worry had teeth. The merger officially paused the following week. No explanation given to the press, just a neutral statement about ongoing compliance reviews. The market reacted cautiously. Stock dipped, not dangerously, but noticeably. Mark's girlfriend asked if everything was okay. He snapped at her. She stopped asking. The first legal notice arrived on a Tuesday morning. Not aggressive, not threatening, just precise. It requested clarification on foundational ownership attribution. Mark stared at the paper longer than he should have. That phrase didn't belong in his world anymore. Foundational was a word you used at the beginning, not now. He called his lead attorney immediately. This time, the reassurance came slower. Across the city, Lena watched the shift with calm detachment. She didn't celebrate, she didn't rush. She understood momentum, understood that systems didn't break at once. They revealed themselves in layers. Her father had warned her, "Don't humiliate him early," he'd said. "Let him expose himself first." And Mark was doing exactly that. He overcorrected, over-explained, over-promised. In board meetings, his confidence sharpened into defensiveness. He spoke faster, interrupted more, dismissed concerns with rehearsed optimism. People noticed. They always did. The courtroom appearance wasn't dramatic. That was the most unsettling part. No reporters, no crowd, just a scheduled hearing regarding corporate clarification, something most CEOs never personally attended. Mark insisted on being there anyway. Control mattered to him. He walked in expecting a formality. He didn't expect her name. Not at first. The judge reviewed documents without emotion, flipping pages with the kind of indifference that made powerful men uncomfortable. When the judge finally spoke, it wasn't accusatory. It was curious. Can counsel explain why the primary early-stage beneficiary was never formally acknowledged? Mark's attorney stood, began speaking, used words like oversight, youth, simplification. Then the judge asked for the beneficiary's full legal identity. The room paused. The name was read aloud. Not Lena Carter, but Lena Whittemore. Mark didn't react immediately. The name didn't land yet. Then it did. His chest tightened. He hadn't heard that name spoken publicly in years, not before the interviews, before the curated image, before he'd asked her to stop using it because it confused investors. The judge continued reading, affiliations, trust structures, investment vehicles. The room shifted. This wasn't about a forgotten wife. This was about control. Mark finally turned. Lena sat several rows back, not beside lawyers, not front and center. She didn't meet his eyes. She didn't need to. Her presence wasn't emotional. It was procedural. The hearing adjourned quickly, too quickly. Mark followed his legal team out into the hallway, questions spilling faster than answers. He demanded explanations, timelines, fixes. There were none. The name Lena Whittemore didn't just exist, it carried weight. That afternoon, calls went unanswered. The merger partner released a statement, cautious but unmistakable. They were reassessing. By evening, Mark's phone buzzed nonstop. Board members, advisors. People who had once nodded through his decisions now wanted clarification. Not reassurance, clarification. That night, Lena walked through a building she hadn't entered in years. No cameras followed her. No one stopped her. She wasn't there to confront anyone. She was there to reclaim alignment. Her father waited inside. They didn't speak long. Everything that needed to happen was already in motion. What Mark didn't understand, couldn't understand, was that Lena hadn't acted out of rage. She had acted out of correction. The world he built was balanced incorrectly. She was the missing weight. And when weight returns to a structure that has leaned too far for too long, collapse isn't violent, it's inevitable. The media didn't know how to frame it yet. They sensed a story, but not the angle. Was it betrayal? Was it deception? Was it hidden ownership? They waited. Mark didn't sleep at all that night. He stared at the ceiling of the house that no longer felt like his. The walls echoed differently now. The silence pressed harder. For the first time since Lena left, he wondered if he had miscalculated something fundamental, not emotionally, strategically. By morning, the audit expanded. By afternoon, assets were temporarily restricted, not seized, just paused. The kind of pause that tells you the system has stopped trusting you, and trust, once gone, never returns the same way. Lena watched the news from a distance. Her name wasn't mentioned. Not yet. That was coming. But first, Mark needed to understand something far more devastating than public humiliation. He needed to understand irrelevance. Because the worst thing that can happen to a powerful man isn't loss, it's being removed from the center of the story. And Mark was already fading. The fall didn't announce itself. It unfolded in increments, the way real consequences always do. Mark woke up to a house that felt unfamiliar, not empty, unsettled. The walls still held art, the floors still reflected light, but something essential had been removed: control, certainty, the illusion that he was the axis everything revolved around. His phone no longer buzzed with urgency, it buzzed with formality. Messages weren't asking how to help, they were asking where to send documentation. Emails weren't flattering, they were cautious, carefully worded, legally insulated. By the end of the week, the board convened without him. They called it a temporary measure. Temporary always sounded harmless, but power knew the difference. The media finally caught the scent, but they didn't understand the shape of the story yet. Headlines danced around the edges: internal review, unverified claims, foundational questions. Analysts spoke in conditional language, careful not to speculate too far ahead. Mark watched every segment, not because he cared what they said, but because they weren't saying his name the way they used to. He tried to fight back the only way he knew how: visibility, interviews, statements, controlled narratives about misunderstandings and legacy agreements. It didn't work because the problem wasn't perception, it was paperwork. The second hearing was larger. More lawyers, more observers, less tolerance. Lena didn't sit in the back this time. She didn't sit beside Mark either. She sat where facts sat, next to records, next to signatures, next to time. When her name was finally spoken in full, it didn't echo, it landed. The judge didn't look impressed. Judges never were. They looked aligned. Aligned with documentation, aligned with structure, aligned with the truth no one bothered to check, because checking would have slowed things down years ago. Ownership was clarified, control redistributed, accounts unfrozen, selectively. Mark wasn't stripped of everything. That would have been dramatic. He was stripped of influence. The company didn't collapse, it corrected. The board restructured, leadership shifted, public statements were issued emphasizing continuity, ethics, and long-term stability. Mark's name disappeared from promotional material within days, not erased, just repositioned. Lower. The girlfriend left quietly, packed her things while he was on a call. Didn't need to. She hadn't signed up for erosion. Evelyn stopped calling. She had always believed proximity to power was protection. She learned too late that borrowed authority vanishes fastest. The mansion went on the market before the paperwork finished circulating, not out of necessity, out of fear. Lena watched none of this directly. She didn't need to. Her work was already done. The final document was signed in a building that smelled of nothing. No polish, no perfume, no pretense. Just clean air and consequence. She walked out afterward without ceremony. No press, no statements. Her silence wasn't strategic anymore. It was complete. Months passed. The story lost momentum, as all scandals do when they refuse to perform. New headlines replaced old ones, new villains, new distractions. Mark tried to rebuild. Smaller ventures, speaking gigs, carefully framed humility. He spoke about lessons learned, about trust, about resilience. But the rooms were different now. The applause was polite. The doors didn't open the same way. And that was the real punishment. Not poverty, not disgrace, but demotion in a world that only respected dominance. Years later, in a city far from Seattle, a private charity gala unfolded behind tinted glass. No cameras, no hype, just quiet wealth and quiet transactions. Mark worked the event, not as a guest, as staff. Black suit, neutral posture, professional smile trained to disappear. He poured drinks without looking at faces, until he recognized the posture before the profile. Lena stood near the balcony, older but unmistakable, not styled for attention, not hiding either, comfortable in herself in a way that couldn't be imitated. He didn't speak. He couldn't. She turned just enough to acknowledge him, not emotionally, not triumphantly, accurately. She tipped him generously, didn't linger, didn't punish. She didn't need to, because revenge had never been the point. Correction had. Lena left early. Outside, the city hummed the way it always did, indifferent, endless, alive. She walked without hurry, without fear, without weight. She had reclaimed nothing she hadn't already owned. She had simply stopped pretending she didn't. And somewhere behind her, a man who once believed he controlled the narrative realized something too late to matter. Power doesn't shout. It doesn't threaten. It doesn't explain itself. Power waits. And when it moves, it doesn't destroy. It rebalances. Hey friends, if these tales hit home for you, smash that subscribe button, drop a hello in the comments, and share where you're tuning in from.